After 10 years of peace on Earth where I trained constantly every day and Loki eventually became worthy of his powers again, I knew that soon Thanos would send a representative to Loki to offer him a deal that he couldn't refuse because they will threaten the life of my sister and hold her hostage, also forcing me into the fight against Thanos and his Chitauri invasion, and I knew that soon this will happen, causing the events of the first Avengers movie, and all of us will assemble including me. And I had already met Gila and I married Gila within the first year of the 10 years of peace, and she decided to live with me and our children on Earth in my Avengers towers with the rest of our family and friends. The representative of Thanos came in the form of Nebula and she talked with Loki and offered him a deal, but with Jean Grey standing there Loki refused, and then Nebula looked at Jean Grey and then Nebula said I see, and then she quickly grabbed Jean Grey and she threatened Loki and my sister Jean Grey by putting a knife to her throat, and Nebula said if you don't do what we want then we will kill your pretty redhead girlfriend, and then Loki said wait, please don't hurt her, I love her and I will do whatever you want, just don't hurt Jean Grey and I'll do whatever you want, and then Nebula said good, you're coming with me, and then Nebula went with Nebula and she told Loki the plan of Thanos and his invasion, and that started the plan of the Chitauri invasion, and then Loki got his scepter from Nebula and I could feel a shift in the timeline and I said it's time, and then I walked out of my hyperbolic time chamber with Gila and our children, and then my phone rang and I looked at my phone where I have him listed in my contacts where it said Baldy Nick Fury, and then I answered the phone and Nick Fury said it's time kid. It's time to assemble the Avengers, and then I sent the message to Phil Coulson, and then Phil Coulson called Natasha Romanoff right after she knocked out a bunch of people that kidnapped her, and Natasha Romanoff answered her smartphone and she said hello, who's this, and then Phil Coulson said it's me Phil Coulson, I'm calling you because your husband James Gray sent me a message saying Avengers assemble, and then she looked at her big diamond ring and she smiled big, recalling the memory of her wedding night and how I made love to her, and then Phil Coulson said I need you to get the big guy, and then Natasha Romanoff said now you know I've dealt with Tony Stark before and I trust him about as far as I can throw him, and then Phil Coulson said no, I got Stark, I meant the big guy, you know, big as in big green, and then Natasha Romanoff looked around at all the bodies laying on the ground and she said okay, tell Fury and my husband James Gray I'm on it, and then Phil Coulson said sure thing Miss Gray, and then Natasha Romanoff hung up the phone and she said shit, but I'm glad my husband James Gray gave me superpowers now, and Natasha Romanoff recalled the flashback memories of me giving her the peak health serum and the perfect golden sentry serum, and she asked me what are these, and then I said those are the best super soldier serums ever created. Basically what it does is unleash a human's true potential and it gives you superpowers, and then I said it comes standard to all the people I love and care about, it's to ensure your safety and think of it like permanent health coverage but with superpowers, and then I said you will need to inject the peak health serum first and then inject the golden yellow serum next, and it will hurt a bit because of the massive transformation to your DNA. You will transform into the ultimate super soldier, and Natasha Romanoff asked me did your other wives take the serums, and then I said yes ma'am of course they did, and if you don't take it willingly I will just inject you with it anyway, just to keep you safe, and then Natasha Romanoff injected both of the serums and Natasha Romanoff became yet another successful experiment of the perfect golden sentry serum, and then Natasha Romanoff smiled big and she said I wonder how strong the Hulk is compared to me, and then with that Natasha Romanoff went to meet with Bruce Banner and she found him living alone in a cabin somewhere, and it was at night and all the SHIELD agents surrounded Bruce Banner's cabin, and then he walked outside where he saw Natasha Romanoff sitting down at his picnic table, then Natasha said take a seat Dr. Banner, and then they both had the same conversation as they did in the original storyline, and she said we need your help Bruce Banner, your country needs you for once, we need you to help save the earth and humanity, and we need the Hulk, and we can either do this the easy way or the hard way, and then Bruce Banner asked Natasha Romanoff okay so what's the easy way, and then Natasha said you come with me willingly without a fight and without any trouble from the other guy inside you, and then Bruce Banner asked her and my second option.